There's one piece of shell-edged plate here. It's either pearlware or whiteware. It's probably whiteware. See how white that
Yes.
the paste is?
Quite different.
Okay, so they call it whiteware
This-
because what's inside.
Side, yeah, yeah.
So what does that make it? Whiteware?
Probably whiteware. And also, if you look at it really closely, the glaze is really crazed. Like there's a lot of little squares in it. That's more typical of whitewares than of pearlwares.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't tell you why, but that's what we see. How there's little tiny square, like little cracks in the
Yeah,
glaze.
yeah,
That
absolutely.
happens as it weathers.
Can't expand and contract successfully
Maybe. Okay.
relative to the substrate.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'll buy that. Saw that one. Another. It's a small pintle. You know.
What is a pintle?
It's a hinge, a type of hinge.
Okay.
Like this one's probably for a shutter.
All right.
So this piece here, this end of this thing, the pintle is driven into a post. So this sticks out. And then there's a hinge on the shutter that comes and wraps, or it has a
Right.
strap hinge that has, and it
So
sits
it-
on that, and it'll swing. And there'd be another one. You'd have to have two
Gotcha.
of them, right?
Yeah.
There's a really large pintle over here that's probably a door. You know, this one. This is probably for a door.
Okay. Okay.
And that's for a shutter.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they're probably both wrought. You know, they're probably 18th century. You know, metalworking.
It's amazing.
What is this artifact?
That artifact?
It's empty.
Wine glass.
Barbara, it's empty.
What century is that?
Embalming fluid.
Embalming
Peter,
fluid.
that artifact is almost empty. I think
I've been doing the best I can.
This is a porcelain teacup, probably, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I
with
would
the
guess.
handle. The
Yeah,
handle
looking
comes
at the
around
handle.
in here, and the size of it. It's probably pretty late.
the eye opener.
This transfer print, and then.
They didn't make that porcelain thin in those days, did they?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say it's late 19th or 20th century porcelain. It's European made or even
Yeah.
American made. It's not Chinese,
Right.
unfortunately. We haven't seen any of that. Yeah, there may be some.
Mystery piece.
They interpreted this as the neck of a doorknob.
Maybe.
Maybe. It could also be a part of a piece of furniture for a
Is it
leg.
wood?
No, it's brass.
Brass.
It's made out of brass. And it's actually oval in outline. It's not deformed. But it had various attachments. Something else fit onto it here, or it fit
Could it
into
be part of a
something else.
lamp or something?
It could be, but it's really, really heavy. As dense as it is, and
Yeah.
I would think that it's more likely to be a furniture part than
Okay.
a lamp.
Is there an opportunity to ask you a leading question?
Sure.
But I'm thinking, you know, you were talking about those early cultures and the Indians,
Mhm.
Yemisi and before,
Right.
and even before tribes. But there was this, you know, there was this whole great archaeological thing around the Clovis
Mm-hmm.
arrowhead and the timing of, you know, the early stages of
Right.
people in this country. And now we are somehow or other finding that there have been groups of people here maybe 8 or 10,000 years before that.
Yep.
Could you comment on a little bit of that, just in terms of
Okay.
what you know? or
Pretty
what you
exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well.
For an archaeologist.
Yeah. For a long time, if you talk about people coming to North America, you know, the earliest cultures that we recognize, and you know, it's by the artifacts.
think? Yeah.
That's what you got. You know, the Clovis points, and they've been, you know, they occur all over North America.
First discovered in Texas, maybe?
Or New Mexico. That Clovis, New Mexico is the place where they were found, and that's why they're called that. And they're very distinctive the way they're made, and the way they, you know, the shape of them and form, but they're found everywhere. Everywhere that there was no ice in North America 13,000 years ago to about 12,000 years ago, there are Clovis points. And there are actually many, many more Clovis points in the eastern part of North America than there are in the west, where they first found them. And in the West, they're always found them there with bison, extinct bison now, giant bison, you know, bison antiquus, or with elephants, you know, mammoths or mastodon. In the East, they're just everywhere. And we don't have the kinds of sites they found in the West. But some places that they have things, they're eating deer. The oldest radiocarbon dates for Clovis things are from a site in Nova Scotia, the Burt, and there they're killing caribou. I mean, these guys are hunting anything and everything wherever they are, but they're everywhere, and there's like nothing before them. So it's
Wow.
for a long time it was like, yeah, this is where it all started, but it's like where, and you know, they're really well made points. The skill to make these points, it sort of all diminishes from there forward.
Yeah,
As
it
an
wasn't
art form.
arbitrary.
Yeah, I mean, there's a distinctive way they're made that people just quit doing that for whatever reason. The points are just as
You
effective,
see nothing.
but they don't look as Clovis point.
Clovis point.
It's a leaf-shaped point.
It's a flint,
I have a picture on my phone
perfect,
that I saw last week. It's one of the finest ones I've ever seen.
they're just perfect, and they're chipped with a flint, shaped perfectly.
And there's nothing, you know, they've done a lot of now DNA studies and things like that. And Native Americans are primarily associated with Asia. You know, they came from Asia. They came across somehow at some time, right?
And
From-
whether it was the bridge or whether it was along the shore with the glaciers
yeah.
and blah, 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 blah.
Where do you go? Darn it.
But now they're finding skeletons of people that are much older than us.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's suddenly, did I take it off? Darn it. I must have. I'm sorry. I thought I had
The
it.
US,
Last weekend, or 2 weeks ago, no, last weekend I was in Buford and a fellow had one he had found near there. It was one of the finest ones I've ever seen, but I took a picture of it, but I took it off my phone. Anyway.
We don't have one here, right?
No, we
But the
don't. We don't.
Clovis point was.
But they've been found in the area.
For saying
All this history is old.
that was the
Yep.
earliest group of
Culture,
people
but
here.
suddenly-
Culture, and then it spread widely, that it was around for a long time.
But it wasn't. It was around for a very short
For a
period
short
of time.
time, it went up.
And they now think there was like an asteroid came really close to the Earth, and Clovis basically goes away at the same time all of the giant animals from the Pleistocene die. And so some thought was that they're intimately connected to those animals, that they're hunting mastodons and mammoths and these giant bison that all die suddenly. And but you know, we have these other things where they even have sites in Florida where they're eating there's oysters and stuff associated with them. So they have a very broad diet. You know, so it's unlikely that just because some mammoths died that they couldn't figure out what to eat. You know. Anyway, but they changed. But suddenly there are at least 24 sites now that are older. They have radiocarbon dates older than Clovis. There are not Clovis points there. Some of them are much older. Like the oldest now is
Mexico, or there's one in
no,
Mexico.
is at the Topper site on the Savannah River in Barnwell County, South Carolina. They have 50,000-year-old radiocarbon dates
Okay.
associated with artifacts.
And then there's some really old ones in Florida too. Bog people or whatever they call them.
Well, there's burials there that are almost as old as Clovis. There's huge cemeteries. But there's a site in Virginia that's about 14 to 16,000 years old, which it's a big quarry. People are there napping stone and making stone tools, but they're not Clovis. Right? So it's pre-Clovis,
Oh, wait,
exactly. Yes,
very
that's what they're called. Then there's several sites in South America that are the same way.
The one I was thinking of is the one in Mexico where they found an intact
Yeah.
young girl in this cave in
Yes,
the water.
there is. Yeah, there is a skeleton. And then.
He's been talking for an hour and 15 minutes and we're.
Well, Peter tries to keep them
Would
lubricated.
you like a little
Yeah.
glass of red wine?
I'm
No,
good.
he's on white.
I'm good.
Okay,
still
but I
have some-
want to get through it.
So-
20th
yeah.
century we know about. I want to get
Okay.
through the rest of this stuff.
Okay, so
Okay.
I mean, people, in my opinion, they had to come sometime between around 30 to 35,000 years ago.
Somehow.
It was the last sort of glacial minimum, and that opens up the biggest move of people here. So then there's probably small numbers, and they just keep growing and spreading, and then
These are
suddenly
really good.
Clovis, are they a late arrival? And there's a lot of talk about that, even talk that they came from Europe, because the closest thing to Clovis technology is Solutrean, and it's in the latest dates for that are in northwest Spain. And there, those guys, they're maritime hunters. They're hunting seals, so they're basically living on the edge of the sea ice, and they undoubtedly have boats and things because they're taking animals, you know, off the ocean. And it would have been real easy for them to come all the way around the North Atlantic that's all frozen at that time, and maybe they wind up here and this, you know, suddenly everybody is like, wow, this is a cool thing,
Thank you.
and they all make that point.
The reason I
But-
brought up this is all relatively new. It's
Yeah.
probably the last.
Probably the last 10 years, yes. Okay.
So is there anything there important?
Well, these are nice. There's pieces of like stoneware.
Mm-hmm. Move in if you can't get a picture.
Wow.
The producer or the director says,
This,
move in.
I think it might be pearlware. It could be creamware too,
Looks
but
like
I think it's
creamware.
pearlware.
Really? And how do
Yeah,
you
there's a
know
little
the
bit of blue puddling in here, and the paste is slightly whiter.
difference?
Again, you know, we might lay it with a bunch of pieces and you see how the variation goes, and then if it's a little yellower, then yeah, it's probably creamware.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tile, probably 20th century.
Okay.
You know, this is a giant spike, and I couldn't tell you anything more about it.
Yeah, it's been to the sea.
It's
Yeah,
been in the water, obviously.
yeah. These are probably 20th century pieces. These are just brick fragments, eroded. That's just melted glass.
Is it a resin?
No, I think it's glass.
Okay.
I think it's just melted. It was heated and deformed, and then